things I'm interested in, in the the archaeology side of it and the landscape archaeology. So looking at archaeological sites in the sort of valleys and deserts and hills that they're in, rather than just a site on its own, because historically we've always looked at just a site, but these days we increasingly realise that we need to look at the land around it as well, because that contains a lot of information about why it was where it was. And quite often the landscape is very different now to how it was then. Particularly when you're going back 2,000 or 3,000 years, you can have a totally different landscape. So the temple at Karnak, for example, we see it now, it's some distance from the river. When they first built it, it was probably right on the river, and what's more, over time, because they added to it over the generations, and every time they added to it, they tended to build out to the west. Not always, but most of the building went westwards, and the evidence from various boreholes and trenches is that that's because actually new land was being deposited west of the temple. So as soon as you had a nice big chunk of land, you put something on it. So kind of landscape archaeology is the thing I'm really interested in.
Does there also come the archaeoastronomic study of alignments and that? Does that get incorporated in what you're doing, or is that still too new, or just a whole separate bailiwick?
Well, it depends what kind of alignments you mean. If you're talking about things like planetary alignments, they are of import. I mean, they're of great importance in Egyptology, because they're the planetary alignments and astronomical events are one of the ways in which we get our dating in Egyptology. Because in Egyptology, one of the problems is, although they write us all these wonderful documents, their dating is by pharaoh and by year. So they'll say it's year so-and-so of such and such a pharaoh, which is fantastic, but how many years BC is that? We have no idea. So one of the ways that we can work that out is by the alignments of the planet Sothis, or it's the dog star Sirius, we call it. And that combined with the fact that they only had 365 days in their year. So unfortunately for them, but fortunately for us, their year crept round over the centuries. So the day when the Sirius star was supposed to rise over the horizon in Egypt, it didn't always rise on that day, because sometimes it was 6 months away from rising on that day again, you know, over another few centuries. But because they realised there was a problem, they got very excited when this star rose on the day it was supposed to, and they tended to write that down, so we can work backwards from that, because we can also calculate when that star would have risen over Egypt at that time from various mathematical calculations. And that's
did they understand precession? Did they have an understanding of that, or anything in the way of leap year?
No, they really didn't have an understanding of leap year. I mean, they must have realised that there was something wrong with their calendar, because when 100 years ago you know that summer happened in the middle of winter, or the month of summer happens in the middle of winter, you're going to figure out you've got a problem. But I don't think they realised what that problem was, and that wasn't fixed until I think it must have been just before the birth of Christ, so a sort of BC AD boundary, because that's not my field of expertise, but they will have known there was something wrong, but they didn't know how to fix it or what it was.